There's a new sheriff in town. Sportier and more aggressive than the last one. Muscular and armed with 6 cylinders. It wears its badge with pride. But what is this new car patrolling the streets? Armin Hildisch from BMW says the new 2 Series is a logical development. The coupe is more able and bigger than its predecessor and has more powerful engines. It's got a lot more to offer and better driving dynamics, and that makes it fit perfectly between the 1 and 3 Series. Our car tester Matis Kurat wants proof. Does the 2 Series really drive so much differently from BMW's 1 Series? We'll soon find out. The coupe feels like a race car for the road, thanks to its engine and sporty chassis. But the manufacturer says fuel consumption is moderate, 7.6 liters of super for 100 kilometers. Not bad for an engine that puts out 240 kilowatts. Those horses under the hood help the coupe sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 4.8 seconds. Matis says the 2 Series seems quite respectable out on the highway, especially with its juggernaut engine. Now it's time to take the car to the limits, on a racetrack. For that, Matis will turn it over to a professional test driver. Matis wants to bring the car, and himself, back home in one piece. So it's off to the races. Las Vegas Speedway. Race car tester Florian Dietrich will see what the 2 Series can do. The engine's 450 Newton meters of torque ensure that the car accelerates powerfully out of the curves. The 8-speed automatic transmission gear changes are instant. Florian notes that despite its increased dimensions, the 2 Series has become more manageable and agile. Its driving dynamics are stronger, but it's still easy to drive, even at the limits of its capabilities. The chassis has changed a lot. The axles are the same basic design as the 1 Series, but have been completely reworked. The same goes for the suspension components and the steering.
Sind aber bezüglich Kinematik, Elastokinematik vollkommen neu abgestimmt worden. Das gleiche gilt für die Federung und Dämpfungskomponenten und für die Lenkung.
The interior is understated and functional. The steering wheel provides a good grip, and the instruments are easy to read. The seats are sporty and have good side support. On the dashboard, the GPS monitor is positioned above the radio and air vents. A special feature is the driving experience control switch with its eco mode and 2 sporty steering modes. Not only the stiffness of the suspension is adjustable, but also the response of the engine, the characteristics of the automatic gearbox, and the feel of the steering. The coupe uses the brakes to control slides. Would-be race drivers can request the optional limited slip differential, which improves acceleration out of curves. With that, the perfectly balanced 2 Series can be wielded as precisely as a surgical scalpel. Experienced drivers can be sure they won't lose control even when drifting through a curve. So this is a 2 Series that's in the running for first place. Our car tester sums up. The 2 Series is clearly different from the 1 Series, most obviously in its looks. The interior may be a bit less roomy because of the sloping trunk. But if you want a coupe that is more compact than a 4 or 1 Series BMW or also a Mercedes CLK, then Matis thinks the 2 Series is a good alternative. An alternative that has no reason to run from the competition. If you want to buy an M-Class 235i in Germany, be prepared to pay 43,750 euros. If you want the 8-gear sport automatic transmission, you'll need another 2,240 euros. Say hello to the first hot hatch from Kia. With its new cee'd GT, the Korean car maker wants to take on the pocket rockets from Volkswagen and Opel. Our car tester, Carola Simons, wants to see whether it's got what it takes. Let's start on the outside. The cee'd treads in line between boy racer aggression and range-topping style with its aggressive but sweeping lines. The little hot hatch certainly looks the part with its angry face, but flashes of chrome give it a more upmarket feel. The design is the work of former Volkswagen designer Peter Schreier. The Kia looks just as good from behind as it does from the front. The twin rear light clusters dominate the rear, and the twin exhausts hint there's something special under the hood. And there is a 1.6-liter turbocharged petrol engine. Time now to hit the road. Carola will be putting the Kia through its paces on an old race circuit. There's no better place to unleash all of the GT's 150 kilowatts of power. She says the cee'd is a real hoot to drive. There's a lot of power to tap, but she feels the car doesn't really hook up well coming out of the turns. It's like there's a delay in getting the power to the front wheels.
Man hat einfach in diesem Moment das Gefühl, dass die Kraftübertragung irgendwie verzögert ist bei diesem Wagen.
But the cee'd GT makes up for that with its sweet handling that makes it a real blast to drive in the twisties. The sporting flair on the outside continues on the inside. Red stitching and lettering remind you that this is no run-of-the-mill car. There's no shortage of buttons and shiny inlays in here. The wraparound seats are crafted from suede and make you feel like you're in a race car. The Kia doesn't skimp on spec and is fitted with a handy rear-view camera to aid parking. Despite being in the compact class, the cee'd's trunk offers a truly cavernous 380 liters of storage space. It also has a false floor in which to store valuables. Carola is a big fan of the inlays on the steering wheel. She thinks they look the real deal. The only problem, she says, is that they can be a bit of a headache at night. They reflect the light from all of the buttons and gizmos here in the cabin, and that can be a bit of a distraction when you're trying to drive.
Weil sich dann natürlich auch diese Blinklichter in diesem Lack spiegeln und dementsprechend ablenkend wird das dann halt alles.
The last thing you want is to be distracted, because this hot hatch really packs a punch. It accelerates from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 7.7 seconds. Despite that performance, it's not going to break the bank. Kia says the car can cover 100 kilometers with a relatively low 7.4 liters of gas. Our test car was a bit more thirsty and consumed 10 liters, but that's still in line with the competition. Time for the final word on the Kia. Carola thinks it's a genuine alternative to the other hot hatches out there, but she would like to see a bit more attention to detail in the interior. All in all, though, she says the Kia has got it right with the new cee'd GT. Another thing that appeals to her is the price.
Und was natürlich auch für den Kia spricht, ist der Preis.
The top-spec GT track version that we tested is available in Germany for around 27,000 euros. Mercedes has lifted the covers on the replacement for the Viano people carrier. The new V-Class shares many styling cues with its predecessor, but the biggest changes can be found on the inside. Its leather seats and sweeping dash wouldn't look out of place in a Mercedes C-Class. The new model will hit showrooms in May and is expected to retail for around 41,000 euros in Germany. Volkswagen is raising the stakes in the hot hatch segment with its revised Golf R. With 221 kilowatts and 380 newton meters of torque going through a four-wheel drive system, the new R promises to be a blast come winter. Its DSG 6-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission helps it to get from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 4.9 seconds. It'd be yours for around 38,000 euros in Germany. Old VW buses, like the T2, have legions of fans. The last one rolled off the production lines in Germany in 1979. But in Sao Paulo, Brazil, production of the T2 continued right up until the end of last year. It was a huge success during its lifetime. For a whopping 56 years, an average of 20,000 rolled off the assembly line every year. Now it's the end of an era. The van got all dressed up for its swan song with a limited edition model. Volkswagen sales director Jochen Funk says the old gal is a very specific product. Some Brazilians regard the VW as a Brazilian brand of German descent. They feel closely tied to both the Beetle and the van. At first, VWs had to be imported to Brazil, but in 1957, a plant in Anchieta began building the T2's predecessor, the T1. Demand grew rapidly from just 370 sold in the first year to over 41,000 4 years later. Production of the T2 began in 1975, signaling the start of a success story that lasted for almost 4 decades. Without changing the van's basic character, VW constantly optimized the vehicle. The limited last edition model was originally envisioned as a batch of just 600, but demand was so great that VW doubled that to 1,200. Maurizio Augusto Marx is the proud owner of one of the first VW vans ever built. He says his is a 1950 panel van. He found it abandoned in the favelas and spent a year and a half restoring the vehicle with original parts. He replaced the headlights and the engine. He says there are only 4 1950 panel vans in Brazil, and only 36 of them in the whole world. In Brazil, the van is a Volkswagen in the literal sense. It's a real people's car. The multi-purpose vehicle can still be seen on almost every street corner. There are no limits to the inventive spirit with which people modify it. The T2 is often seen with the most wacky modifications. It can be a police car, a fire truck, a mobile snack bar, a TV broadcasting studio, or an ambulance. The VW van is good for just about everything. Everyone loved this jack of all trades, but it wasn't able to keep up with the times. Stricter safety and emission regulations helped kill off the cult classic. Jochen Funk explains that the van was designed more than 60 years ago, when airbags and advanced braking systems didn't exist. Even the best engineers can't fit these upgrades into a VW bus. So now regulations mean that the company had to end production despite continuing high demand. The final last edition model, number 1200, was never put up for sale. It was carefully packed up and sent by freighter home to Wolfsburg, Germany. A special place was waiting for it at the Volkswagen Auto Museum. Here, the T2 enjoys its retirement among its relatives. Sven Oliver Kuhn, head of the museum's vintage car team, is sad that this perennial icon is no longer being manufactured. He's glad that the last of the species is in his own hands, but says that is meager consolation.
Aber uns freut es natürlich, dass das letzte Auto hier steht, aber eigentlich ist man auch gleichzeitig sehr traurig, wenn man das Fahrzeug sich näher betrachtet.
The T2 is going nowhere soon. With such a loyal following, plenty of existing ones won't be junked or retired for a long time to come. Chevrolet's Corvette Stingray still has a dedicated cult following. In the early 1960s, Chevy, one of America's big four, set out to give established sports car makers like Jaguar and Maserati a run for their money. The new Corvette's design reflected the typical sports car styling of the time, a long engine compartment with a snappy fastback. The shape, character, and image of this automotive legend were American through and through. Until the arrival of the Dodge Viper in 1992, the Corvette was the only true sports car made entirely in the USA. Under the hood, of course, the Stingray had a V8, packing 250 horsepower in the basic version. An optional extra was a 4-speed stick shift, which was a usual option for an American car. The Stingray was also the first Corvette to offer two different body styles, a coupe and a convertible. Chevrolet fitted successive models of the Stingray with bigger and bigger engines. The V8 big block version sported a businesslike but fake air scoop on the hood. Throughout its 5-year run, the Stingray's basic form remained almost unchanged. That was also unusual in 1960s America, where new models appeared every year. Time now for a trip back in time. The Corvette appeared a decade before the Stingray hit showrooms. Chevrolet unveiled the first model, now known as the C1, to an admiring public at the General Motors Motorama in 1953. Chevrolet engineer and race car driver Zora Arkus Duntov is known as the father of the Corvette. He mounted a lean 2-seater fiberglass body on a robust box frame, a concept that has survived to the current generation of Corvettes. The Corvette didn't get its famous V8 engine until 1956. After that marriage, the street cruiser was transformed into a serious sports car. In 1960, a Corvette team entered the Le Mans 24-hour race against the European competition, taking 8th place overall, but first in its class. It was a good showing for the new kid on the block. By the early 60s, the original Corvette was beginning to look past its sell-by date. The design department kicked around various ideas until head designer Bill Mitchell got inspiration for the first Corvette coupe from an actual Stingray. The new Stingray was even sportier, leaner, and meaner. "47-year-old engineer Oliver Trieb is a Corvette fan, body and soul. He collects everything connected with this automotive icon. His impressive collection includes Corvettes from 1964 to 1996. But his favorite is the C2, the Stingray model built from 1963 to 67. Whenever he finds some time in his busy schedule, he takes one of his treasures out for a spin. He says he dreamt of Corvettes even as a child. He saw one as a small boy and immediately fell in love with it. Eventually, he began collecting them whenever he could. He admits it's a typical male dream. He explains that in American, car collector circles, the C2 is the USA's answer to the Porsche. It handles very well in comparison to its contemporaries, and relative to other vintage classic sports cars, it's still affordable.
Bei diesen Sportwegen noch einigermaßen bezahlbar.
Oliver Trieb had his blue 65 coupe completely restored and customized to his own specifications in the United States. But Corvette fan though he is, he says the performance of the big block V8 is only just enough. American car fans call a Corvette like Oliver's a sleeper. That means it has lots of power under the hood, but everything else is like the original. Nowadays, a Stingray in good condition can run a good 50,000 euros. The most sought-after models are the big blocks and split-window coupés. The best place to find one, if at all, is in the United States.